In the ancient city of Jerusalem, a sense of profound unease recently took hold, as the horizon was swallowed by a massive advancing wall of black clouds that turned a bright afternoon into an ominous gray twilight within mere moments. These were not the slow-moving storms the region is accustomed to, but a swift and suffocating veil that rushed over the historic walls like a dark tide, silencing the busy marketplaces and halting tourists in their tracks as the very air began to feel heavy with an unexplained tension. As the sunshine vanished from the winding stone alleyways, the wind arrived not as a breeze, but as a surging river of force that whipped through narrow corridors and snapped the heavy fabric of market tents while trees bent under the sheer weight of the atmosphere. Amidst this chaos, as missiles streaked across the darkened sky, witnesses reported something far more mysterious: a brilliant, silent sphere of light moving with intent within the churning clouds, leading many to wonder if they were witnessing a mere meteorological event or the unfolding of ancient biblical prophecies. This atmosphere of uncertainty reminds us of Psalm 97, for which declares that his lightning illuminates the world and the earth shudders. And for those watching the sky darken so unnaturally, it felt as though a warning was resonating through time itself. This celestial display was mirrored by equally terrifying events across the American landscape, where the raw power of nature seemed to be rising in tandem. In Kyoto, Iowa, the sky was torn apart by a violent tornado that left a path of devastation in its wake, serving as a grim reminder of how fragile our surroundings truly are when the heavens decide to shift. Meanwhile, the city of Chicago was caught completely off guard by a catastrophic flooding event, where the water levels surged with such incredible speed that streets were swallowed before residents could even react. Vehicles were tossed like toys and infrastructure crumbled under the weight of the flash flood, reflecting a terrifying reality where the things we build with such confidence can be overwhelmed in a single heartbeat. From the ancient hills of Jerusalem to the modern streets of Chicago and the plains of Iowa, these events suggest a world in the grip of a powerful transformation, where the force of the natural world is proving that it can reclaim the land at any moment, leaving us to wonder if these are the signs we were told to watch for. If you want to stay connected to these unfolding stories and keep your faith strong during these trying times, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share a little prayer in the comment section below to support one another as we witness these incredible phenomena together. Many others found it to be a troubling question. Was this just another storm, or would it be the start of something far bigger developing over the old city? Something strange started to emerge inside the storm clouds as the sky over Jerusalem darkened and the wind grew stronger. Many initially thought it was just another lightning strike occurring deep within the dense clouds. Most locals initially paid little attention to the abrupt bursts of light that storms in this area frequently create, but witnesses quickly noticed that this luminous atmospheric anomaly was different. The light appeared to congregate into a single incandescent orb-like shape, rather than flashing swiftly across the sky like regular lightning. A number of witnesses reported seeing what appeared to be a sphere of brilliant energy slowly traveling into the storm clouds above the city when they peered up from the streets and rooftops. It was circular, shining white with orange undertones, and it was visible for a few seconds before disappearing and reappearing. This luminous celestial object appeared to hover silently inside the clouds, traveling slowly across the sky like a floating lantern, in contrast to lightning, which flashes and vanishes practically instantaneously. Videos of the enigmatic aerial phenomenon quickly went viral on the internet, showing the odd light repeatedly emerging from the storm. Above Jerusalem, another dramatic scene was taking place at the same moment. As incoming rockets from neighboring areas traversed the sky in the opposite direction, Israel's advanced defense interceptors launched into the air. Lightning flashed ferociously across the horizon as thin lines of fire raced upward through the black clouds. The sky appeared nearly surreal for a short while. Above the ancient city, lines of fire, lightning strikes, and the mysterious glowing sphere appeared simultaneously. The event was later described by numerous witnesses as a bizarre collision of human strife, nature, and something much more enigmatic. The bizarre picture instantly reminded some onlookers of a biblical scripture. Jesus foretold in Luke 21:25 that the sun, moon, and stars would provide signs before to significant historical turning moments. Many individuals thought these phrases were symbolic for centuries. However, some Christians have questioned if such heavenly signals could manifest more literally than previously thought in light of such incidents. The storm swiftly unleashed its full force as the enormous dark clouds kept pressing over Jerusalem. A torrential downpour that many locals claim to have never seen before was released as the sky, which had only moments before become gray, abruptly opened. Unlike a typical storm, the rain did not fall softly. Rather, it rained so heavily that the ancient city's streets soon started to flood. Narrow paths between the ancient stone structures quickly became swift streams of murky water. The unrelenting rain made it difficult for drainage systems to keep up. Water flooded into stores, rushed through marketplaces, and quickly infiltrated homes along the lower streets. As the water level continued to rise, families in a number of communities were compelled to swiftly relocate from the ground floors of their homes to upper rooms or rooftops. Witnesses recounted the terrifying moment when cars, together with wood fragments, trash cans, and other debris, started to float slowly through the streets due to the powerful current. Sirens could be heard echoing through the rain-soaked streets below as people stood on roofs, waving their arms and yelling for aid in a number of dramatic situations that were caught on camera. Many locals believed that the historic city had become a river in a couple of hours due to the storm. The event reminded several onlookers of a stirring biblical chapter. According to Psalm 93:3, "O Lord, the floods have lifted up. Their voice has been raised by the floods." Many Christians saw these phrases as lyrical poetry for centuries. However, incidents like this have prompted others to question if biblical prophecies of this kind might indicate actual occurrences, when nature itself seems to cry out with extraordinary intensity. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below if you are keeping a close eye on these events. The storm was far from over, and more strange things were about to happen as the rain kept falling over Jerusalem. The rain that had been falling on Jerusalem started to alter as the storm over the city grew stronger. The torrential rain gradually gave way to something much more violent. Suddenly, fragments of solid ice started to fall from the sky instead of water from the black clouds. Initially, the streets and rooftops were hit by a few tiny frozen projectiles. People who were already keeping a careful eye on the storm were taken aback as they bounced lightly around the stone roads. But in a matter of seconds, the sound over the city started to shift. Larger, heavier blocks of ice began to fall from the clouds. What had started off as a few chunks of ice soon developed into a catastrophic ice storm. With jagged cracking noises, frozen masses started to fall around Jerusalem. They struck windows, cars, and rooftops with such force that many locals fled for safety right away. Some of the golf ball-sized heavy ice stones hit windshields and metal roofs like falling rocks. Windshields started to break. There were jagged pieces of ice strewn all over the roads and sidewalks, and rooftops trembled loudly. Within a matter of minutes, the ground was covered with shattered pieces of frozen debris, turning entire streets white. As the roads became hazardous and slick, drivers slowed down or halted entirely. Shop owners hurriedly pulled down shutters and closed doors as people hurried inside surrounding buildings. Pedestrians fled into stores and apartment buildings in a number of neighborhoods to avoid the falling frozen barrage. As the jagged hailstones hit carts and tables with a deafening rhythmic thud, street vendors were forced to instantly abandon their stalls and livelihood to seek shelter, while panicked parents frantically called their kids inside to escape the escalating atmospheric violence. The storm's startling intensity caused even the local animals to react with visible fear. While stray dogs and cats scrambled for any available cover beneath parked cars, heavy doors, and building entrances, birds were seen swiftly fleeing the roofs in a desperate attempt to find safety from the frozen barrage. Lightning flashed ferociously across the enormous, swirling storm clouds above the city, momentarily illuminating the heavy hail falling over Jerusalem in a blinding strobe-like effect, as thunder continued to rumble and shake the very ground beneath. As the storm developed further, many people were deeply reminded of stirring biblical passages that speak of nature's raw power. Scripture states in Job 37:6 that he says to the snow to descend on the earth and to the rain to be a tremendous downpour. While many readers thought these verses were only symbolic depictions of dominion over nature for generations, storms like this serve as a stark reminder to Christians that the forces mentioned in the Bible might be much more real and literally manifested than many previously thought. Stay with me, because the storm over Jerusalem was still building toward an even more scary and unprecedented moment, as the hailstorm proceeded to hit the historic city with relentless force. Shortly after, Jerusalem was hit by the storm's strongest and most destabilizing portion. Many locals initially thought the threat could be going away at last, because the powerful hail that had hit the city moments before had started to lessen, and the torrential rain had started to decrease in its volume. However, the storm clouds continued to move, rotate, and twist in strange, unnatural ways far over the hills around Jerusalem. As though the storm had not yet unleashed all of its hidden force, dark layers of cloud continued to slowly rotate across the sky in a menacing circular pattern. Witnesses then noticed an odd tubular formation inside the clouds. Initially, it looked like a slender column of revolving air extending downward from the shadowy, pitch-black cloud base. The spinning column became visible in a matter of moments, although many onlookers in the vicinity initially believed it to be just another moving cloud formation or a trick of the light. Near the outskirts of Jerusalem, the revolving cloud started to extend lower and lower until it eventually touched the ground, creating what meteorologists would later classify as an extremely rare tornadic event. Since tornadoes are quite rare in this specific geographic area, many spectators found the sight to be even more alarming and prophetic in nature. Strong winds started tearing across the open terrain as soon as the funnel-shaped cloud struck the Earth's surface. The wind's ferocity caused massive tree branches to break like toothpicks, and surrounding buildings' roofing fragments were torn into the air like paper. The wind was described by witnesses as a hellish sound they had never heard before. Some residents likened the noise to a roaring freight train speeding across the sky, while another described it as sounding like a massive jet engine passing straight overhead at low altitude. As the tornado passed over wide spaces and pastures beyond the city, debris soon started to spiral upward in a chaotic vortex. Broken branches, thick dust, and heavy pieces of construction debris were drawn up into the revolving column of air. The storm appeared to focus all of its remaining energy and force into that one spinning funnel for a few tense minutes. While lightning continued to flash incessantly behind the storm clouds, videos taken from a distance showed the dark column writhing and pulsating against the gray sky. Some folks who were observing the incident were reminded of a potent verse in the Bible. The book of Nahum 1:3 states that the Lord has his way in the whirlwind and the storm. These phrases were seen by many as poetic descriptions, but incidents like this prompt a more profound concern. regarding whether such descriptions may accurately capture actual instances in which supernatural forces behave in ways that appear to defy common scientific patterns. Following the catastrophic storm that engulfed Jerusalem, focus shifted from the turbulent sky to the ground below the city where a hidden history was waiting. Archaeologists were carrying out ordinary excavation work that had been going on for a few weeks in the neighboring Valley of Hinnom, which is already well known for its profound historical and biblical significance. The discovery appeared unremarkable at first, just another layer of the past being uncovered. Beneath heavy layers of ancient rock and dirt, workers discovered a number of old clay jars. These jars, which were frequently used in antiquity to store wine, grain, or oil, are frequently discovered in archaeological sites around Israel. But the context of this find was different. As the dig went on, scientists started finding items that seemed far more peculiar and unexplained. Archaeologists found what looked to be a highly ornate ceremonial sword next to the clay jars. This sword had artistic artistry and esoteric symbolic markings all over its surface, in contrast to the usual steel weapons used in ancient combat. Instead of being utilized in war, experts speculated that it might have been employed for high-level ceremonial or priestly ritualistic purposes. But a carved chest uncovered further in the ground was the most fascinating and mysterious find of the century. The chest was adorned with strange symbols that did not instantly correspond to any popular patterns from recognized historical eras. A number of academics who examined the markings found that several of the forms resembled archaic Proto-Hebrew symbols found in the earliest biblical traditions. The discovery has sparked a lot of intense debate among historians and biblical experts, even though researchers have not yet determined the precise significance of these hidden symbols. The Valley of Hinnom has had significant historical and biblical significance for ages, often connected to warning, judgment, and spiritual transformation in the ancient scriptures. Because of this, discoveries in this field frequently garner massive international interest, particularly when items seem to be related to ancient religious traditions that have been lost to time. The timing of the finding seemed particularly remarkable and divinely orchestrated to some believers who were seeing these events unfold alongside the storm. Scripture states in Luke 12:2 that there is nothing concealed that will not be revealed, nor hidden that will not be known. For many years, this verse was understood figuratively, but incidents like this serve as a reminder that occasionally the past itself can resurface from the earth in surprising ways, exposing historical details that have been hidden for thousands of years. Many thought the worst of the weather had already passed as the strong storm system continued to move past Jerusalem, but the atmosphere had one last disturbing shift. Rescue workers were still working to assist individuals who were stranded by the rising water as floodwaters continued to pour through the city's lower streets. However, the storm was starting to take an unexpected and frigid turn high in the hills around Jerusalem. Temperatures abruptly decreased as the clouds moved into higher altitudes with shocking speed. Just moments before, it had been pouring heavily, but now the rain was gradually turning into dense, heavy, and suffocating snow. Drivers on mountain roads soon encountered hazardous and life-threatening situations. The strong winds carried snow across the roads, creating whiteout conditions that made it harder to see, and the wet pavement quickly hardened to a thick layer of black ice. Drivers found it difficult to keep control in the frigid weather, causing vehicles to slide, slow down, or halt entirely in a state of gridlock. The fact that all of these contradictory things were taking place simultaneously added to the moment's absolute uniqueness and terror. Floodwaters continued to flow into streets in the lower areas of the city while a few hours prior, a rare tornado had developed close to the city's edge, and massive hailstones had been raining from the sky. While the rain and flood persisted below, Heavy snow now covered the ground in the higher hills surrounding Jerusalem in a bizarre climatic anomaly. As the storm developed, several locals reported feeling as though the weather had become completely unbalanced and chaotic. Later, meteorologists clarified that strong storm systems can occasionally produce multiple types of weather simultaneously when they move across areas with varying heights, but even they were baffled by the intensity. While colder air in upper regions can swiftly transform the same liquid into snow, warmer air in lower valleys might cause rain and flooding. Yet many observers were still taken aback by the mix of rain, hail, snow, and tornado conditions inside a single localized storm system. The event also reminded some believers of a potent biblical text in Job 37:10, which says, "By the breath of God, ice is given, and the broad waters are frozen." Verses like this were interpreted as metaphorical, but incidents like this serve as a reminder that the powers mentioned in the Bible might be much more physical and literal than many previously thought. Please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below if you are paying close attention to these uncommon and apocalyptic events. One last incident was about to leave Jerusalem shocked once again as the storm gradually moved away from the city. Many locals thought the long day of commotion was finally coming to an end as the tremendous storm over Jerusalem gradually started to fade. The strong winds that had swept through the city were gradually waning, the hail had ceased, and the heavy rain had lessened. Gradually, people started leaving their houses to examine the storm's devastation, looking at damaged rooftops, strewn debris, and flooded streets. The worst seemed to have passed for a split second, but an unforeseen event of even greater magnitude was about to occur. Suddenly, the earth beneath the ancient city started to shake with a violent intensity that caught everyone off guard. It initially seemed to be a slight tremor traveling through the ground, akin to the far-off rhythmic rumble of large machinery or a heavy freight train passing nearby. However, the shaking intensified in a matter of seconds, evolving into a terrifying seismic event that echoed through the stone foundations. The walls of centuries-old structures started to creak and groan under the pressure. Things fell from shelves in houses and stores, shattering on the floor, and windows rattled loudly in their frames as if they were about to burst. Unaware of what was going on, residents of several Jerusalem neighborhoods hurried out onto the streets in a state of panic, fleeing the potential collapse of their homes. The actual earthquake only lasted a few seconds, but the abrupt shaking of the earth left many people quite uneasy following a day already marked by heavy storms, hail, flooding, and strong winds. The incident was later considered by many locals as the single scariest aspect of the entire day. One witness stated with a trembling voice, "First the sky attacked the city with ice and fire, and then the ground itself started moving beneath our feet." Later, seismologists verified that a significant little earthquake had been detected in the vicinity, confirming the geological upheaval. Because Israel is located in such close proximity to the Dead Sea transform fault system, earthquakes are always a mathematical possibility in this region of the world. However, many observers question the chilling timing of the tremor coming right after such a powerful, apocalyptic sequence of storms. As these events transpired, some believers were instantly reminded of stirring biblical passages that seem to mirror this exact chaos. According to Psalm 18:7, "Then the earth trembled and quaked, and the foundations of the mountains shook." These kinds of texts were frequently interpreted for centuries as purely symbolic language that depicted God's might. But today, some people are starting to question whether these old stories might represent actual, literal instances in which nature itself reacts with overwhelming force. When the sky unleashes storms, hail, wind, and flood in a single day, and the ground itself starts to tremble thereafter, it creates a pattern that is impossible to ignore. Jerusalem has gained massive international attention in recent days due to this unprecedented chain of strange happenings. What started off as a strong storm over the historic city swiftly developed into a series of events that were hard for many to dismiss as mere coincidence. First, as enormous storm clouds raced across the city, the sky abruptly darkened into a midday midnight. Then, when lightning and defensive missile trails passed beyond the horizon, witnesses claimed to have seen an enigmatic sphere of light, a luminous aerial anomaly floating among the storm clouds. Large, jagged hailstones began to fall across neighborhoods shortly after torrential rain turned ancient streets into rushing, murky torrents. A rare tornado developed close to the city's periphery, tearing through the landscape with a demonic roar. While flooding persisted in the lower valleys, snow began to appear on the nearby slopes in a bizarre climatic twist. Finally, a small earthquake shook the earth itself, completing a multidimensional assault of the elements. Each of these occurrences can be interpreted differently on its own. Meteorologists can study the unique weather systems, seismologists can examine the fault lines, and archaeologists can study the ancient items found underground in the Valley of Hinnom. When examined independently, each event has a potential scientific explanation. However, many observers start to see a divine pattern that is hard to ignore when these events are compared side by side. The hills, the sky, and even the old earth beneath Jerusalem all appear to react quickly and simultaneously. Natural forces that typically happen one after the other, separated by years, emerged nearly at once. The scene gave many viewers from all over the world the distinct impression that something supernatural or prophetic might be happening in the vicinity of one of the world's most important cities. Jerusalem has always had a special place in human history. It has been the focal point of faith, prophecy, and international attention for thousands of years. This city was frequently described as a location where significant historical events would take place in ancient scriptures written far before modern science existed. As a result, even little changes in the area can attract global scrutiny. When talking about Jerusalem's destiny, one biblical scripture is frequently brought up. Zechariah 12:3 states that Jerusalem will become a burdensome stone for all nations. Many have pondered these words for generations, speculating about how they might eventually materialize in the physical world. Some individuals are starting to reconsider these old cautions as tensions across the world increase and unexplained phenomena happen in the area. Nowadays, a lot of people pose this straightforward but very thought-provoking topic. Are these occurrences just one more chapter in Jerusalem's lengthy history, or can they be indicators of something much greater that is still to come? Rarely do significant historical turning points start with a single dramatic occurrence. Rather, they frequently develop through a sequence of tiny events that gradually start to build a broader, undeniable pattern. When seen in isolation, these moments can seem unremarkable. A region may be hit by a strong storm, the ground may tremble momentarily during an earthquake, or ancient relics may be discovered. Often, each incident can be described independently by geologists, scientists, and historians. However, people inevitably start asking more in-depth inquiries when a number of strange disruptions start to occur in such a brief window of time. This is particularly true when those events occur in a place that has had profound spiritual and historical significance for thousands of years. Jerusalem has long been seen as the meeting point of faith, history, and prophecy. Due to its special location, even little alterations to the sky, the terrain, or the atmosphere surrounding the city frequently draw intense global fascination. The Bible often provides warning patterns prior to significant spiritual turning points in human history, as many believers point out. Seldom do indications appear in a single instant. Rather, they emerge gradually through social events, natural disruptions, and monumental archaeological discoveries that uncover obscure aspects of the past. People are frequently prompted by these patterns to stop and consider where the world might be going. In Luke 21:11, Jesus describes events that will take place prior to significant changes in the world. This verse is frequently cited in these debates, stating there will be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, along with fearful events and great signs from heaven. Some readers think these words were merely metaphors, but the verse starts to seem more pertinent to contemporary onlookers when they witness peculiar weather, odd celestial occurrences, and surprising earthly discoveries all occurring at the exact same time. Crucially, the Bible does not offer these cautions as causes for dread or fear. Rather, it characterizes them as opportunities for introspection and spiritual humility. They serve as a reminder of the limitations of human control over the world and the possibility of unexpected historical developments. Believers are warned throughout the Bible that nobody can pinpoint the precise moment when history will reach its last chapter. Jesus himself forewarned that the day would come at a time when many people least expected it, like a thief in the night. As a result, the actual goal of prophecy has never been to forecast precise dates, but rather to act as a call to action, a reminder to be mindful and to be spiritually prepared. People might pause and reflect more fully on their surroundings during moments like the ones we witnessed in Jerusalem. Earthquakes, storms, and other natural indications frequently serve as a reminder to humans of how precarious our dominion over the globe actually is. Thousands of years of history, conflicts, devastation, reconstruction, and rebirth have all occurred in Jerusalem. However, faith and prophecy still revolve around this timeless stone city. Matthew 24:42 provides a clear lesson from the Bible. Keep an eye out because you never know when your Lord will arrive. Romans 13:11 provides an additional urgent reminder. It's time for you to awaken from your slumber. We appreciate you staying to the very end of this video as we analyze these monumental shifts in our world. If this message caused you to think deeply about the future, please leave a comment below with your thoughts or prayers, like the video, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on these prophetic signs. Jerusalem is making a powerful and undeniable statement to the entire world right now as nature and ancient traditions collide in a spectacular fashion. Massive floods recently ripped through the heart of Jerusalem and several other major cities, destroying critical roads, trapping terrified drivers in their vehicles, taking innocent lives, and causing scenes of absolute devastation that no one had anticipated occurring in the Holy Land. Suddenly, the unimaginable became a terrifying reality for the residents of this ancient region. Simultaneously, something even more disturbing and spiritually profound was taking place behind the scenes of these natural disasters. Many observers and scholars think that the last monumental preparations centered on Jerusalem began with the official and controversial approval of a perfect crimson sacrificial heifer, a ritual rite mentioned in ancient sacred literature as a mandatory requirement for the final purification of the land. Then persistent rumors began to circulate that the Golden Gate, which has been sealed shut with heavy stone for ages and is intimately related to ancient messianic prophecy, was actually beginning to move and crack. Furthermore, claims about a groundbreaking discovery related to a historic burial site are now raising entirely new concerns among the global community. People everywhere are questioning with a sense of urgency, why is all of this happening right now at this exact moment in history? The chaos began when Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and at least 8 other major cities were completely devastated by the arrival of Storm Byron, a massive atmospheric system that unleashed relentless heavy rain, violent flash floods, and hurricane-force winds. This led to chaos on a national level that shifted the entire country into a state of survival. Major roads and high-speed highways in central Israel were transformed into raging, murky rivers in a matter of minutes, trapping hundreds of drivers inside their sinking cars. People were stuck in rising floodwaters, some of which rose above the wheels and even the windows of their vehicles, forcing emergency personnel to work around the clock in life-threatening conditions. At least 18 individuals were saved from cars trapped in heavily flooded areas in places like Yavne during a series of high-stakes rescues. The government was forced to officially proclaim a state of national emergency due to the rapid and dangerous deterioration of the situation. Homes, ancient streets, and even massive businesses were completely inundated by the relentless floodwaters. A large supermarket was forced to close its doors right away, as shocking viral footage showed water rushing inside, sweeping products off the shelves and destroying the interior. While rescue personnel were observed rowing small boats through the flooded streets in northern and central cities, the famous Tel Aviv promenade was overtaken by the sea. Both fatalities and severe injuries were caused by the sheer violence of the storm. Strong winds uprooted massive, ancient trees in a schoolyard in Rishon LeZion, causing harm to students who were caught in the path of the falling debris. Temperatures fell precipitously below 10 degrees C during the night, and a man was tragically discovered dead with acute hypothermia in the midst of the freezing rain. He passed away immediately upon the landfall of Storm Byron, highlighting the deadly nature of this climatic shift. Roads collapsed into sinkholes, fences were flattened, hundreds were hurt, and dozens were rescued as the infrastructure was stretched to its breaking point by rains that reached 150 in a matter of hours. These were quantities that the modern drainage systems were just physically unable to manage or redirect. Furthermore, this wasn't a unique or isolated event. While Mount Hermon was covered in a thick, unnatural layer of snow, Jerusalem was hammered by jagged hail, and floods extended from the coastal lowlands all the way into the deep desert areas. Thousands of distress calls from people living in tents and makeshift shelters, unable to flee the biting cold and rising waves, flooded the emergency lines. This incident reminds many of the ancient words in Psalm 93:3, which describe how the floods have lifted up their voice and their roaring against the foundations of the world. We are being cautioned about periods of global instability, where creation itself seems to attest to the fact that a monumental change is on the horizon. The unimaginable has truly occurred after centuries of waiting, looking, and occasionally even questioning the ancient texts. The sacrifice of a flawless ritualistic heifer has finally been authorized by religious authorities. For those who don't know the depth of this tradition in the ancient records, this isn't just a common animal. Ancient mandates specify that a perfect red specimen, one that was never yoked for labor and has absolutely no physical flaws, must be offered as a sacrifice to facilitate a process of spiritual purification. People were subsequently purified using its ashes, particularly those who had interacted with the deceased, as it was considered the only way to cleanse the nation spiritually before approaching anything sacred, especially a reconstructed temple. And now, that thousands of years old ceremony is on the verge of becoming a concrete reality for the first time in modern history. The plans for the future of Jerusalem seem to be perfectly aligned with the reappearance of these rare crimson animals. Israel recently received 5 flawless specimens from a specialized ranch in Texas. Because even a single white or black hair would disqualify them from this high-stakes ritual, they were monitored constantly with high-tech surveillance and expert care. It was generally accepted by many scholars that these animals were the last prerequisite for ceremonial purification, which serves as the first essential stage in reconstructing a third temple on the Holy Mount. Then, not too long ago, the global community was rocked by a quiet announcement that one of these original animals had finally been prepared for the rite. Many believers interpreted this event as much more than just a religious ceremony. They interpreted it as a physical indication that a divinely orchestrated plan for Jerusalem is subtly but clearly taking shape before our very eyes. This custom is one of the rarest and most revered laws in human history, with only 9 such animals ever being deemed legitimate since the time of Moses, over 3,500 years ago. While the earth was flooding and the rituals were being prepared, a gate in Jerusalem that has been closed for almost 500 years began to show signs of an unexplained disturbance. The Eastern Gate, sometimes referred to as the Golden Gate, has been totally walled up and sealed for centuries. It hasn't been used by a single person, and nobody has had the courage or the permission to open it. Stone after stone, it was closed completely in the 1500s to prevent a specific prophetic entry from ever occurring. It hasn't moved since then, not once, not even during massive conflicts, intense earthquakes, or the total reconstruction of the surrounding city. However, things are now shifting in a way that defies logic. Some people have reported seeing the massive stones move somewhat lately, as if something from the inside is pushing outward. Others claim to have heard deep movement and weak, grinding noises coming from the actual sealed entrance. The timing is too unsettling to ignore, even though many skeptics try to write it off as the wind, the aging of the mortar, or clever camera tricks. In some of the recent footage, there appears to be a tiny, growing gap between the ancient stones, almost like the gate is finally taking a breath after being held shut for half a millennium. Additional video captured at various times reveals light emerging through previously invisible fractures in the rock. Naturally, skeptics are ready to explain it away by claiming the building is simply outdated and that weather and time eventually lead to cracks. However, people who are familiar with the ancient prophecies of Ezekiel and comprehend the sacred topography of Jerusalem are much slower to dismiss it. According to those ancient records, that gate is supposed to stay closed until a specific ruler returns at a certain high point in human history. Jerusalem is an ancient city with a wealth of stories, history, and profound significance. The eastern entrance faces the Mount of Olives and leads directly toward the former site of the temples. When the city was demolished in 70 AD, the Romans smashed the gate, but it was rebuilt and later sealed. All 3 main world faiths consider it to be a sacred place, sending pilgrims every year to view its massive walls and the gorgeous but silent entrance. It is the only gate on the eastern side of the Temple Mount, often called the Gate of Mercy. Since the Middle Ages, it has been continuously walled, following the specific warnings that it would not be opened again until a great event takes place. On that day, it is said that feet will stand atop the Mount of Olives, causing the mountain to split and creating a massive valley that changes the geography of the region forever. Why is it presently the only gate in Jerusalem that is permanently closed? Because it represents the only straight route to the location of the former sacred site. Although this specific stone gate was constructed centuries ago, it is thought to be built directly over the path where history's most significant figure once walked. The precision of these ancient predictions is what continues to astound modern observers. These words were composed over 600 years before the Common Era, yet they foretell that the gate would be sealed and subsequently opened during a time of great global change. Finally, a secret that remained shut for centuries, concealed deep within the heart of the city, has been revealed. A tomb thought to be the last resting place of a historical figure has up until now been hidden by layers of marble, the passage of time, and intense theological controversy. Recently, the ancient burial place was open to a group of scientists, archaeologists, and religious scholars, something that hasn't been done in almost 2,000 years. They discovered much more than just cold stone and ancient dust. They found something much deeper and more historically explosive. Could the most important event in human history be confirmed by the physical evidence found in this ancient tomb? Could it provide concrete proof of a historic interment, or perhaps murmur truths related to a miraculous resurrection? The world held its breath as the last heavy slabs were raised and time gradually receded. What mysteries has the tomb been keeping hidden for so long? And why is everything we believe to be true about faith and history being called into question by this specific discovery? A group of specialists from the National Geographic Society and leading technical universities joined together with the common objective of gaining fresh perspectives on one of the most sacred locations in human history. This was not a typical excavation. It took years of careful talks between various factions to allow the tomb to be opened. A rare agreement was eventually struck to better comprehend what was inside and to prevent the structure from crumbling. To stop looting and decomposition, the tomb had been covered in thick marble cladding and sealed with a lead-lined slab. What was inside had never been seen by any living person in the modern age, until now. As these signs in the sky, the earth, and the ancient ruins all converge, it becomes clear that Jerusalem is preparing for something that will change the world forever. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts below as we continue to monitor these unprecedented events. As the world watched with bated breath, a haunting question hung in the air. Would the opening of this ancient site reveal only an empty, dark room, or might it contain tangible, physical proof of the death and resurrection of a figure who changed the course of human history? This mausoleum has withstood nearly 2,000 years of religious strife, catastrophic earthquakes, raging fires, and brutal invasions. Nevertheless, it continued to stand, rebuilt, and reclaimed time and again by people who held an unwavering faith in its significance. The tomb's survival echoed a message of rebirth, much like the profound narrative of life overcoming death that it represented. Then, the long-awaited moment finally arrived. Under the expert guidance of renowned restoration specialist Antonio Morapu, a team began the laborious and dangerous process of saving the structure known as the Edicule. The building was in a state of severe decay. Metal supports from earlier, crude restorations had deteriorated, and the ancient walls were laced with deep, threatening cracks. Every ounce of old, crumbling mortar had to be removed by hand with surgical precision. To stabilize the building without destroying the original holy stone, high-tech titanium supports were carefully put into place. However, the most sensitive and nerve-wracking job was still to come. Lifting the heavy marble slab that had encased the burial bed for generations. The group was acutely aware of the danger. The marble was priceless, brittle, and could have shattered at any moment under the tension. And at last, the slab was moved. What they found beneath the upper layer was a stunning surprise. A tiny, delicate cross was found engraved on a second, hidden layer of marble. Experts believe it was carved in the 12th century by crusaders, those who sacrificed everything to retake the Holy Land and left this silent, stone testament to their devotion. While that carving added immense historical weight, the real discovery, the heart of the mystery, came next. Beneath the layers of history lay a limestone burial bed carved straight into the living rock of a cave. This physical reality perfectly fits the ancient descriptions of a new tomb cut into a rock garden. It was more than symbolic. It was profoundly human, physical, and geological. For the first time in centuries, researchers looked upon the exact location where history records that the body of the Messiah was placed. It was not merely an archaeological milestone. It was a monumental clash between cold science and ancient conviction, reaffirming that the empty tomb was an actual preserved place, rather than just a spiritual concept. Now fully visible, every layer of evidence found beneath the structure appears to confirm the ancient accounts. Let's examine 6 crucial affirmations that support the veracity of these historic stories. We reach the initial confirmation. The location of the garden itself. The ancient records state that the site of the crucifixion and burial was located just outside the city walls. While this may seem like a minor detail, it actually fits perfectly with the strict customs of the past. Under ancient law, anything pertaining to death, burials, or executions was regarded as ritually impure. Therefore, these events could not have taken place within the city limits. Jerusalem had to remain ritually pure as a holy sanctuary. This is where the archaeology gets fascinating. Remnants of an actual cultivated garden were recently discovered beneath the current church. It was situated exactly where the city's first-century fortifications would have ended. This is a perfect, localized match rather than a rough estimate. It indicates that the original writers were not speaking metaphorically or inventing a legend. They were describing an actual physical location that we can now verify through modern excavation. The second confirmation lies in the nature of the tombs themselves. We know the garden is in the correct spot, but the tombs discovered within that garden are even more remarkable. History describes a brand new solid rock tomb owned by a wealthy man named Joseph. This wasn't a repurposed grave or a haphazard natural cave. It was hand-carved, unused, and prepared for a high-ranking individual. When archaeologists looked beneath the church, they found several tombs carved out of solid rock. These were not natural caverns formed by erosion. They were meticulously and neatly sculpted by hand. This level of artistry is exactly what one would anticipate from a high-class burial of that era. Creating such a site required immense finances, time, and skilled labor, precisely what a wealthy figure of the time would have provided. Finding tombs that match the exact social and architectural descriptions of the ancient texts provides an additional layer of historical assurance that we are looking at the real thing. The third confirmation reinforces this. These tombs were deliberately carved, not natural. In the past, common people were often interred in pre-existing, low-maintenance natural caves to save money and effort. However, everything changed when a prominent individual passed away. Wealthy households didn't just use random holes in the rock. Their tombs were freshly cut, cleaned, and fitted. The ancient accounts are very clear that the site was a rock-cut tomb. Archaeologists have confirmed that the smooth edges, squared shapes, and stone chisel lines are still visible on the limestone surfaces today. These were created with clear purpose and intent. This tells us that the persons for whom these tombs were constructed were not common citizens. We are looking at tangible proof of a high-status burial site that corresponds precisely with the historic narrative of a wealthy man offering his own prepared grave for the burial of the teacher. The fourth confirmation involves the speed and timing of the burial, which was quite a pragmatic necessity. The records describe a hasty burial because the Sabbath was quickly approaching. According to tradition, once the Sabbath began at sunset, no one was allowed to handle a body. Therefore, the burial spot couldn't be far from the site of the execution. Time was of the essence. The garden discovery provides the answer to how this was possible. Archaeologists found exactly what would be expected in such a dire circumstance: ready-to-use burial tombs in an adjacent garden area directly outside the city walls. The layout of the terrain allowed for a dignified burial in a very brief amount of time without traveling for hours. This small but significant piece of the puzzle demonstrates that the logistics of the story make perfect sense when matched against the physical geography of the city. The fifth confirmation is found in the garden's ancient vegetation. In addition to the stone and tombs, researchers investigated the soil and discovered fragments of olive trees, grapevines, seeds, and pollen. This is more than just a fascinating fact about ancient gardening. It carries immense symbolic weight. In the ancient texts, grapevines and olive trees represent far more than just landscape. They are profound symbols of healing, peace, and spiritual life. The olive tree represents a covenant and anointing, while the vine is a symbol of communion and the source of life. Finding these specific plants thriving in the very garden where the burial took place establishes a clear link between the message of the story and the physical environment. This wasn't just a random patch of dirt. It was a place that mirrored the same symbols of life, death, and restoration that the narrative itself proclaimed. Finally, the sixth affirmation is perhaps the most surprising of all, as it involves an act intended to destroy the location that actually ended up preserving it. In 135 AD, the Roman Emperor Hadrian sought to eradicate any traces of this burgeoning faith in Jerusalem. To do this, he erected a massive Roman temple directly on top of the site where early followers believed the events had occurred. It was a deliberate attempt to bury the memory of the Messiah beneath pagan idolatry. However, here is the twist. By building over the site, Hadrian inadvertently sealed it off. For almost 2,000 years, the garden and the tombs were concealed and protected by the weight and stone of the Roman buildings. They were not messed with, expanded upon, or looted. Ironically, the hostile Roman Empire ended up preserving history despite its best efforts to erase it. The fact that Hadrian focused on this specific spot proves that even in the 2nd century, the location was already recognized as the authentic site of the burial. Today, as natural calamities strike without warning and sacred sites that have been silent for centuries begin to move and alter, we are seeing a convergence of evidence. A location that was closed off by history has been reopened by those looking for the truth. These findings suggest that the ancient stories are not just myths, but are rooted in a physical, historical reality that is still coming to light today. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below as we continue to explore the mysteries that are resurfacing from the earth. We lift our collective voices in a profound and urgent plea for the total and absolute protection of every human soul currently caught in the devastating crosshairs of global conflict and the escalating fury of natural disasters that are shaking the very foundations of our world today. We call for a sovereign and divine shield of protection to descend upon and surround the millions of innocent men, women, and children who are currently forced to endure the unspeakable horrors of modern warfare, where the peace of their homes has been shattered by the deafening roar of explosions and the relentless machinery of destruction that knows no mercy. We stand in the gap for those whose ancestors lived in these lands for millennia, but who now find their peaceful streets scarred by the deep wounds of metal and fire. And we ask that an invisible and impenetrable wall of safety be built around every family unit that is currently huddling in fear within the shadows of crumbling buildings. We pray with deep intensity for those who are mourning the sudden and violent loss of their loved ones in the heat of battle, asking that a supernatural sense of comfort and unyielding strength reach into the deepest and darkest corners of their grief-stricken hearts, so they may find the will to continue when all hope seems lost. We intercede for the displaced and the millions of refugees who are currently wandering across borders and through desolate landscapes in search of a safe haven where their children can sleep without the fear of the next strike or the sound of sirens echoing in the night. Let the hand of mercy and grace rest upon those huddled in cold, dark underground shelters, praying with every breath for the arrival of a peaceful dawn that seems so far away in this current atmosphere of chaos. We demand a divine intervention in the spirits and minds of those who hold the absolute power of life and death in their hands, moving their hearts away from the cold pursuit of malice and conquest, and toward the urgent restoration of human dignity and the sanctity of every single life. As we witness the earth itself react with violent storms, terrifying tremors, and unprecedented celestial signs that defy all scientific explanation, we ask for the total preservation of every household and every lineage across the entire globe, from the highest mountains to the deepest valleys. Let the walls of every home be fortified by a strength that no natural disaster can penetrate, and no human violence can ever breach regardless of the intensity of the storm outside. We specifically intercede for the elderly who are too frail and weak to flee the chaos, and for the tiny infants who cannot yet comprehend the magnitude of the world's turmoil, requesting that they be carried in the arms of a constant and celestial guardianship that never sleeps or falters even for a second. For every individual forced into the front lines of combat against their will, and for every civilian trapped behind iron blockades and high walls, we ask for an immediate way of escape and a clear path toward total reconciliation and safety. May the fragmented and broken pieces of our current world be gathered and mended by a force that is far greater and more enduring than human hatred or political ambition ever could be. We call for an absolute end to the shedding of all innocent blood, and the immediate cessation of every weapon and every strategy formed against the inherent value of human life. Let the heavy spirit of fear that has gripped the hearts of the masses be replaced by a spirit of immense power, love, and a sound mind for every person currently trembling under the weight of these historic and potentially apocalyptic events that are unfolding before our very eyes. In every city where the floodwaters have risen to consume the streets, and in every region where the very ground has shaken with the wrath of the earth, let the recovery be swift, and the protection of the people be absolute and unwavering. We pray that as these monumental and prophetic shifts occur in our atmosphere and our history, they serve not as a harbinger of terror or destruction, but as a final clarion call to return to our shared humanity and to care for one another with a selflessness that transcends all borders, all ideologies, and all petty differences. We ask for a unique and unbreakable hedge of protection around the ancient and holy city of Jerusalem and all its diverse inhabitants, that it remains a beacon of light and hope rather than a stone of burden or a center of strife. Let every rescue worker and first responder be granted a supernatural level of endurance, and every medical professional be given the divine wisdom to heal and restore what has been shattered by the violence of man and the unpredictability of nature. We stand in total solidarity with those whose voices have been silenced by years of oppression, speaking life and liberty over their situations, and claiming a future where their children can grow in peace and prosperity. We ask that the food and water supplies of the hungry be multiplied miraculously, and that the basic needs of the poor be met even in the midst of a war zone where resources are scarce and help is far away. Let the light of truth penetrate the fog of propaganda, and let the hearts of the people be open to see the common thread of divinity that runs through every human being regardless